Hi everyone, welcome back. Today is a special day. It is both the fast of Esther, Tענית Ester. It's also Erev Purim. Tonight is Purim. And so I'd like to share with you some ideas dealing with Tענית Ester, and also Purim is the only biblical fast day. But nevertheless, Tisha B'Av is considered a little bit more strict because it describes the destruction of both holy temples in Jerusalem. So it's considered more important than the other fast days, and therefore it starts also the night before, because the burning of the Beis Hamikdash began the night before, and it continued straight through until the next day, even till the 10th, until the noon time of the 10th of. But we can see it in a different way. Yom Kippur and the Feast of Esther, the Fast of Esther, rather, Tענית Ester, have one thing in common, and the other fast days have something else in common. The four other fast days are the 10th of Teves, the Tzom Gedalia, the 17th of Tammuz, and Tisha B'Av. What do they all have to do? They all refer to the destruction of the temple, either the first temple or the second temple, the breaching of the walls of Jerusalem, the destruction of the temples, the destruction of the walls of Jerusalem. They all have to do with the Churban, the destruction of the temples in one way or another. Yom Kippur and the Fast of Esther do not really have to do with the destruction of the temple. They have to do with our own self, with teshuvah, with repentance. Certainly Yom Kippur is, of course, the Day of Atonement, the Day of Repentance, where we ask God to forgive our sins. And it also commemorates the receiving of the second tablets on Mount Sinai after the first tablets were destroyed because of the Jewish people's sins. And Moshe went up on Mount Sinai and received the tablets again. So it has to do with Kabbalas Torah, the receiving of the Torah. Similarly, the Fast of Esther also has to do with Teshuvah. The Jewish people were sinning, they were assimilating, they were eating from the feast of Achashverosh, and they did teshuvah, and through their fasting, they prayed to God that their sins should be forgiven and wiped away. And Purim also is a day of the receiving of the Torah at Sinai. As it says, Kiblu HaYehudim Masha Kiblu Kfar, they received the Torah, what they received earlier, and that is they received the Torah on Purim out of love, rather than out of fear from before, when God lifted the mountain above them. So the Fast of Esther has a lot to do with Yom Kippur, as does Purim. So they have something more to do with that rather than the other fasts. It's interesting that Yom Kippur is the most serious, most important of all the fast days, that even if a person is sick and their life is not in danger, so they still have to fast. Only if their life is in danger do they fast. It's a very strict holiday, obviously. Everybody, really, even people are not feeling well, you have a little headache, you still fast on Yom Kippur. On the other hand, the Fast of Esther is the most lenient of all the 6 fasts of the year. The most lenient of all of them. So that even if you're not quite feeling well, or, you're not up to it, or your blood sugar is a little too high, you don't have to fast on the Fast of Esther. It's a very, very lenient fast, and all the rabbis will tell you that. So it's interesting that Yom Kippur is the most strict of all the fasts. The Fast of Esther is the most lenient of all the fasts. And why is that? Because on the Fast of Esther, first of all, we're going into the holiday of Purim. So this afternoon, even though we're fasting, and we read the Torah portion, Vayichal, dealing with fast days, and the Haftorah, we do not say Tachanun, the prayers of supplication, which are normally said in a fast day, Long Avinu Malkeinu. We do not say that on the Fast of Esther in the afternoon during Mincha, because the holiday of Purim is coming right after that, in which we're going to celebrate like crazy. So since it's a great celebration, every time a holiday comes at night, Tachanun is not said in the afternoon, in Mincha. So we see that the fast of Esther is a very, very lenient fast. And nevertheless, you should fast if you can. But if it's difficult, you don't have to. The fast of Esther commemorates the fasting that Mordechai asked the Jewish people to fast for 3 days to pray to God that the wicked decree of Haman be annulled. As we know, the decree was that all the Jewish people should be killed, and the Jewish people, especially the children, 22,000 Jewish children, 24,000 Jewish children came together, and they all fasted and wore sackcloth, and because of that, and because of their repentance and their prayers, the decree was annulled. So it's actually, in many respects, a very happy day, but it's a day that we see how powerful the power of teshuvah is, the power of repentance is, that it can even annul a decree of death. And the Rebbe talks about a lot on a fast day. Certainly, there are several aspects of a fast day. Of course, one is that we fast, obviously, but there are other factors as well. For example, on a fast day, it is customary to learn more Torah, to learn more Torah, and we do that by having a Torah reading, a special Torah reading at Mincha on the fast of Esther and all fast days. There is a special, we read Vayechal, a special Torah reading in the afternoon, and a Haftorah, which is never done on a fast day except for Yom Kippur. On Yom Kippur, we also do a Haftorah, which is the book of Yonah, and it's the only other fast day that or the only other day that we read the Torah, and we read a Haftorah in the afternoon. So we do that on Taanis Ester, because it says that we should increase the Torah study. Why? Because the Pirkei Avos, the Ethics of the Father, says, Al Shlosha Dvarim Ha'olam Hamed, on 3 pillars does the world stand, Al HaTorah, on Torah study, Al HaVoda, on service to God, which is prayer, which is called Avodah Shebelev, prayer, service of the heart, which is prayer. In olden days, the Avodah service was the service of the Beis Hamikdash, the Karbanos, the sacrifices. We refer to the Avodah on Yom Kippur at Musaf, where we talk about the Avodah service at length. It has to do with the service of the temple. But today it refers to prayer, because prayer is in place of sacrifice. And the third pillar by which the world stands is Al Gemilas Chasadim, on acts of loving kindness, charity, acts of kindness to one another. And we see that, how do we do that on the fast of Esther? By increasing tzedakah, increasing our charity, and especially before Mincha, it's customary to give the half a shekel offering, Machzis HaShekel. We take $3 $half in our currency, we lift them up, we take them to ourselves, and then we exchange them for $1.50 at least, the equivalent, and give that to charity. So there has to be an act of charity associated with Machzis Shekel and with the fast of Esther. So these 3 pillars, Torah, prayer, and giving a charity, are integral parts of the fast day. And in fact, in every fast day, we increase these 3 things. Certainly, even on Yom Kippur, the davening is much longer. We say more Tehillim. We pledge charity on Yom Kippur many times, even though we don't do it, but we pledge it for after Yom Kippur. That's why many times people will get an aliyah, and they pledge charity on behalf of the aliyah that they get. So all of these things, these 3 things, prayer, Torah study, and charity, are an integral part of a fast day. So when the fast comes, we should all increase in these aspects, and through them, hopefully, God will annul any of the decrees that are in heaven, and we will be forgiven for any sins that we did, and be able to continue on in a happy way throughout the rest of the year. No question about that. And that has to do with every fast day. So the fast of Esther is a very significant fast day, a day in which we come together and we fast and we pray to God and we prepare ourselves for the holiday of Purim. So we should all increase in these things as well on Taanis Ester, as well as fasting. Along comes Purim. So Purim comes tonight, and Purim is a tremendous celebration. It is one of the happiest days of the year, without question. It is a very joyous day of the year. We dress up, we wear masks, we have a lot of fun. The children get together, and we rejoice by singing and by having celebrations on Purim. What are we celebrating? We are celebrating Jewish unity. We are celebrating the annulment of the decree of Haman and Achashverosh. So we are celebrating those things as well. But it's interesting that the Rebbe points out that the holiday of Purim is a holiday of unity more than anything else. And in fact, every Farbrengen, every gathering, the Rebbe used to talk about unity among Jews. What is the idea of Purim? What is the unities that we see among Jews on Purim? Well, all of the mitzvahs of Purim. First of all, we get together and we read the Megillah. The Megillah is generally read together with groups of people. As we say, Barov Am Hadras Melech. In a multitude of people is God glorified. And in fact, it's a beautiful thing for people to come together, come to synagogue and join together for the reading of the Megillah. Even if people are mourning, people are in Shiva, they are allowed to get up from Shiva and come to Shul to hear the Megillah being read. People, you can read the Megillah individually, agreed, but it's much better to read the Megillah in a group of other people. You know, Chabad has many mitzvah campaigns, and all of the mitzvah campaigns we have to do with Jewish unity, with Achdus, every one of them. We all get together and we join together. What are the other mitzvahs of Purim that we refer to as well that we do? Well, there's the feast of Ester, the Sudas Purim, and in fact, when I speak to non-Jews, I was just giving out some shalach manos yesterday at an apartment building, and the concierge at the apartment said, "Oh, another holiday?" Because I always go there I give out challahs there, and I give out matzah there for Pesach and things like that. Oh, they see me, another holiday? What's the holiday? So non-Jews have never heard of the word Purim, usually. But the Feast of Ester, they've all heard. Why? Because the book of Esther is found in their Bible as well as our Bible. It's one of the books of the Bible. So I always mention the Feast of Esther. Oh, the Feast of Esther and Haman. Yes, absolutely. None of them can pronounce the name Achashverosh. That's too hard for them to pronounce. But they all know about Purim and the Feast of Esther. So ideally, we should get together and not just have a feast by ourselves. Tomorrow is the eve of Shabbos. And because Shabbos starts at night, you're supposed to have your Feast of Esther, your Sudas Purim, in the morning, before Chatzos, before noontime, or 1 o'clock. Actually, closer to noontime. And it presents slight problems because usually people get together and synagogues have large communal Purim feasts. In Chabad, we always have a big Purim party every year, Purim feast. At night, we have a big party, and in the daytime, in the afternoon, we have a big Purim meal. Not this year, because of the virus, people are much more low-key. People are toning it down a great deal. I've been looking at some of the publicity from our other synagogues and Chabad centers around the world, and many of them are not having Purim parties at all. They're having Megillah readings, masks are required, social distancing is required. They're doing it a lot of times in backyards, in parking lots, in the backyards of synagogues, as we are, and then they're sending people on their way. We don't want people to get sick this year. If we remember, the virus started around Purim of last year. around March of last year. And exactly how did it get started, we don't quite know, whether it was in China or wherever it was. But it hit particularly bad among the Jewish community in New York. And why was that? Because the virus was around and people came together for Purim parties and Megillah readings, and lots of people got the virus. Probably because of Purim. Probably because we didn't know about it at that time. No one knew about any virus at that time, but it was there lurking among us at that time. So people got it. Thank God in our Jewish community here in San Diego, and especially in University City, I don't think anybody got it because of Purim, but in many cities they did. So Purim is a time really now that we are going to be much more low-key this year. We're going to be much more careful, and we're going to do the mitzvahs of Purim, but in a more subdued way. And I urge you very much as well to tone it down so that, God willing, next year we'll be able to have the biggest celebration in the world. And I am told that the numbers of the virus, especially here in San Diego, are coming down quite a bit. Thank God. Partially because people are starting to get the vaccine, and I strongly urge you to get the vaccine. I am getting the vaccine already. I had the first one already. I'm getting the second one on Monday. The vaccine helps, and the vaccine, all rabbis are encouraging people to get the vaccine. If people are saying don't get it, don't listen to them. Get the vaccine. And I think that it's fair to say that the vaccine is helping a great deal in lowering the numbers. I know of a rabbi who was speaking out strongly against the vaccine until his own brother got the virus and died from it. True story. I heard about that. And he turned around and he became a strong advocate of the vaccine. So I know some of you are against it, and you're going to say, oh, Rabbi Leider, don't know what you're talking about. I do know what I'm talking about. Get the vaccine and tell everybody to get it. The numbers are coming down. And perhaps they're also coming down because of the fact that the virus is getting tired. It's going its course, as they say, and it's finishing. But nevertheless, getting back to Purim, the Purim feast this year should be more low-key. It should be more among people who have the vaccine already, or are family members, or even have your Purim meal in private, just yourself. Let's be careful for a little while longer until this thing passes by. But it affects us. And the Purim meal is going to be different this year. It should be done in the morning, and it can be done more low-key. Have some bread, have something to eat, and you fulfill the mitzvah of Sudas Purim. But normally it's done in terms of Berov Hamhadras Melech, in terms of unity. And even if you are having your Purim meal alone in your own house or your own apartment, and you're sharing it with no one except for you, you should know one thing: you are not alone. Everybody is together with you. We are all joining together and having the Purim meal together. We are all joining together and having the Purim meal. So keep that in mind. And God is also with you. And God is celebrating the Purim meal with you as well. Certainly. It's altogether possible I may be having the Purim meal separate as well, because my wife will be at school in the morning. So it's very important. She doesn't get off till about noontime. So I may be having my Purim meal alone as well. So let's do the best we can, but keep in mind that unity still continues because we're all in this together, and we're all doing it together. Another mitzvah of Purim is Shloach Manot, or commonly called Shlach Manos, where we send out Purim gifts, at least 2 readily edible foods, to at least one person. And again, it's done through unity. It's done through a third person. You give it to one person, say, give it to the other person. Or leave it at their step. I've been delivering Shalach Manos, and I don't knock on doors, usually. Sometimes I do, but usually I don't knock on doors. I leave it at the step and leave. And let the person take it themselves. By the way, something I just thought of for Machzah Shekel tonight, for the half a shekel offering, what we are doing is we are providing, thanks to Joe Shulman, we are providing gloves, latex gloves for everybody. Put on a glove and take the shkolim, take the $50. So no one will be touching the half shkolim. And we'll be having the Megillah reading outside, etc., etc. So Shalach Manos is also usually done by giving people the food gifts and them partaking of them. The Shalach Manos ideally should be separately wrapped foods, like hamantashen in a wrapper, candy in a wrapper, cakes in a wrapper, whatever you're going to do, and it should be separately packaged in that way. Keep that in mind as well when you're preparing your Shalach Manos if you haven't already. But nevertheless, it has to do with the idea of Jewish unity. People will be there. They'll be sending them at your doorstep. You'll open your door, and there will be several Shalach Manoses for you to enjoy. And then the next mitzvah is Matanos Levyonim, gifts to the poor. And here we are supposed to give at least a few pennies to at least 2 people. The more the merrier. Again, you should give as much as you can. You should spread the wealth, as they say, because people cannot enjoy Purim if they're poor. If they don't have the wherewithal, they cannot enjoy Purim. And many people will use the gifts that we give them to provide for their families on Purim, to provide a feast for Purim. And this year there's another aspect as well, and that is the holiday of Passover is coming up, simply 1 month to the day after Purim. Purim is on the 14th of Adar, Passover is the 15th of Nisan, and the Matanos Levyonim, the gifts to the poor, could also be used for Passover. We have a separate mitzvah tzedakah on Passover called Maos Chitim, literally gifts of food, money for wheat, so people could purchase matzah. But certainly the Matanos Levyonim, somehow I think the rabbis were thinking about Passover when they instituted the mitzvah of Matanos Levyonim as well. There's no limit to Matanos Levyonim. Normally we limit our tzedakah to what we can afford, but on Purim, it says in the Shulchan Aruch that everyone who extends their hand, who asks for alms, should be given. I remember in New York, all the synagogues were packed full of beggars who knew to come on Purim to the synagogues because nobody would turn them away. And certainly synagogues collect money during that time, and a lot of people, we distribute a lot of tzedakah to people who need it, and I'm sure they don't only use it for Purim, but they use it for Pesach as well. Keep that in mind when you're giving out your tzedakah as well on Purim, that people could need it for Pesach. In fact, I have been distributing myself several thousands of dollars from our synagogue to people in need, and I will continue doing that as long as the funds continue through Pesach. So if you're looking for a very worthwhile cause to help out people, certainly Pesach and Matanos Levyonim on Purim is certainly a very, very important way to do that, because Pesach this year is going to be tough. A lot of people are unemployed. A lot of people are toning down their Pesach celebrations as they are toning down their Purim celebrations. I've noticed that people are giving less for Shalach Manos this year. Used to be that there were tremendous campaigns and people were giving Shalach Manos all over the place. Not this year. A lot of people just can't afford it. It's just not on their priority list to give out candy and hamantashen to people when they don't have meat and potatoes and cheese and butter on their table to feed their families. So people are toning down a great deal. Those of us who have should give to others who don't have. And especially during this coming month, after Purim, it's a very, very big mitzvah to receive, to give out. I have, thank God, been getting money from the Leider Foundation here in San Diego, and I publicly want to thank them for providing thousands of dollars to me, to our synagogue, and to other synagogues and agencies throughout the city to help with giving money to families in need, families who are in need of help. So thank you, Sharon Goodson and the Leider Foundation, for all of your generosity, and we really, really appreciate it. And much of the money that I've been sending out to people and giving out to people in need has been coming from them as well as from other people as well. So keep that in mind. When people get tzedakah, when they get help as they need it, this creates tremendous unity among Jewish people because they know that people care for them, that we are all in this together. And one of the beautiful things about Jews is that Jewish people are very generous. Jewish people help out others. We really do. We don't like to take charity. We hate taking charity. But we like giving charity. We like giving to other people who are in need. And throughout our history, it's been like that. I think I might have mentioned to you that on my trips to Israel, I walked through the streets of Jerusalem, especially the older, more religious areas in Jerusalem, Geula and Mea Sharim, and areas of Ramot, and places like that. And I just feel so good seeing signs up there advertising various tzedakah funds and various soup kitchens to feed those people who are in need. It's a tremendous thing and such an important thing. Jewish people are a nation of Rahmaniyot, of having charity and mercy for other people, to give for other people. And that is a tremendous thing and a wonderful mitzvah of Purim, as it is for all the holidays, to provide for people. So the Rebbe talks a great deal about the idea of unity and how important unity is. We are all in this together. I think that the virus has brought together people more than virtually any holiday or any mitzvah has in many, many years. I won't say in our history, but in many, many years. It really has brought out the very best in us, not just in us, but in all people throughout the world. The amount of generosity by our government, by other governments, by individual philanthropists is really an incredible thing. And a fundamental part of the story of Purim is the mitzvah of tzedakah, of helping other people. Certainly it was Haman who offered to pay Achashverosh 10,000 coins, 10,000 talents of silver for the merit of destroying the Jews, of killing the Jews. And certainly by us giving charity, we annul that decree. By us giving far more than 10,000 talents of silver, we annul that decree also by our giving of tzedakah. As it says, tzedakah tatzil mimavis, tzedakah saves us from death, and it's a tremendous mitzvah to do that. Let's talk a little bit about the idea of Purim and what Purim is, what's special about Purim. I can relate very much to Purim in a tremendous way, because Purim talks to us, those of us especially who live outside the land of Israel. Purim took place outside of the land of Israel. It took place in Babylon during the 70-year period that the Jewish people were exiled after the destruction of the first temple. Let's remember our Jewish history a little bit, that the first temple was built by Solomon, and it was destroyed by Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, of Bavel. The Jewish people were marched into Babylonian exile. Babylon today is Iraq, we were marched into Babylon, into exile. According to the prophet Daniel, the exile was to last for 70 years. At the end of 70 years, the Jewish people, first of all, had it very good in Babylon. They prospered in Babylon. They did well there. They established yeshivas and synagogues In fact, the modern day synagogue really started, the idea of the synagogue started in Babylon as a Beit Knesset, not a Beit Hamikdash, a Beit Knesset. And it started there. The months of the year really were formulated in Babylon. Many other things. The early tradition of the oral tradition in Judaism, Torah Shebaal Peh, really started and discussed in Bavel as well during that time. The period of the prophets during that time as well. So anyways, the Babylonians were conquered by the Persians, taken over by the Persians. And the story of Purim took place while the Persians were ruling at that time. The Persian Empire was the greatest empire in the world. It stretched from India to Ethiopia, as the beginning of the Megillah of Ester refers to it. It took place during the days of Achashverosh, Hamolech Mehodav Yad Kush, who reigned from India to Ethiopia, which was the known civilized world at that time. We're talking about the year 500 before the Common Era, the 4th century. And it was during that time that King Achashverosh, who had just become king 3 years earlier, consulted his astrologers and his wise men and determined that the 70 years of exile was up. It passed already. They were incorrect. They calculated erroneously. But to celebrate the fact that the Jewish people were no longer going to be given permission to go back to Israel, God was not going to release them. He made great celebrations. First for everybody for 180 days, and then a smaller one for his close subjects. And the Jewish people participated. And it was their own destruction that they participated in, where the king Achashverosh displayed all the magnificent curtains and tapestries and golden and silver vessels and copper vessels of the temple, which he had. And the Jewish people celebrated that, and they accepted their fate as an assimilated group. For that reason, God punished them with possible extinction, with the decree of Haman and Achashverosh. So we can understand that where we live. Jewish people live in all over the world, certainly, but we live in the West primarily and in Israel. And in the West, the Jewish people have a good life. We are in exile. When the state of Israel was founded in 1948, we didn't see tremendous ingatherings of the exiles coming to Israel. People didn't go. Why would they go? Life was too good for them in New York and in Chicago and in Philadelphia. Why would they go to Israel and suffer with malaria and with poverty and with mixing in a strange culture? They didn't speak the language, and it was harsh over there. It was difficult. So they stayed put, and they enjoyed life, and they grew life in America and in England and in Canada and throughout Western Europe. Life was good for Jews, very comfortable for them. The Jewish organizations would say, Jews, come back to Israel. The Jews said, no, why should we come back to Israel? Life is too good for us here. We live in the suburbs. We have a very good life. We are active. We go to the universities. We are active in politics and in the arts and in everything. On the other hand, take a look what it has done to us. It has caused an intermarriage rate of approximately 70%, 60% of all marriages that take place with Jews take place with non-Jews. Jewish people are assimilating at an astronomical rate, and we seem to be very happy about it. Jewish mothers and fathers do not mourn anymore when their children marry Gentiles. In fact, they're happy that they're getting married altogether. They're happy about it. How tragic that is. How sad that is. When we are raising children, grandchildren who are not even Jewish. Many of our rabbis today in Reform and Conservative synagogues are not halachically Jewish. They are not halachically Jewish, where their mothers were not converted in a halachic way. They're not Jewish. Think about that. It's an amazing thing where the rabbis themselves are not Jewish, where our grandchildren are not Jewish, and we are accepting it, and we are recognizing that that's the way it is, and we celebrate with them, and we have the non-Jewish holidays. It's a travesty. It's a horrible thing, and where is the end to it? How does it end? It ends at this rate with the destruction, God forbid, of the Jewish people. God forbid. If 70% of all marriages with Jews are to non-Jews, how much longer will it be before we Jewish people become an extinct race, an extinct people? The only ones that are really holding the fort are the Orthodox Jews that are having 7, 8, 9 kids. If you're my family, 11 children, all Jewish. So we're holding the fort. We must hold the fort. These are dangerous times. We are living in the times of Purim right now. Very, very dangerous times. And we need to do some teshuvah. We need to increase our Chabad houses and outreach to the world and to other people out there. Spread the word out that we are not going to take it, and we are going to come back to Torah and to mitzvah observance as never before. And this will be the ultimate celebration when Mashiach comes, that it'll be a tremendous celebration of Jewish survival, not just Jewish observance, but the very survival of the Jewish people is at stake. And without being frightening about this whole situation, we see the similarities between now and the holiday of Purim. But we know, how did it end? How did Purim end? Purim ended by the Jewish people coming back to God. LaYehudim ha'isa orav simcha sasan v'yikar. To the Jewish people there was light and gladness and joy. It was a tremendous celebration of the Jewish people. And the greatest joy, the greatest happiness of all is a Jewish simcha, a Jewish wedding, a Jewish bar mitzvah. When people come together and they celebrate. What is the big celebration? When two Jewish kids get together and they marry each other and they're both Jewish and they both promise to establish a Bayis Ne'eman B'Yisrael, an everlasting home among the Jewish people. There is no greater joy in the world than that celebration. And the parents and the grandparents, and if you're lucky, great-grandparents, are beside themselves with joy and with celebration. And it becomes the greatest Sudas Purim of all, the greatest feast of Ester that ever could be, because a feast really needs a reason to feast. You don't just sit down and have a celebratory feast without a reason. You need to celebrate something. You need to make l'chaim. Bring out a bottle of wine. As we know, on Purim, you're supposed to get so drunk you can't tell the difference between Mordechai and Haman. It's called Ad Lo Yada. We become so happy and so joyous that happiness knows no bounds. And how does that happen? When Jewish people are keeping Torah and keeping mitzvahs and being faithful and loyal to Jewish tradition and our Jewish heritage, then the feast of Purim becomes truly a feast of celebration. And maybe that's what the feast is really all about. Not just that we were saved from the decree of Haman, but we are being saved today as well through the celebration of Purim. And that's why I think it's such a beautiful thing when synagogues have communal Purim meals. We all get together, not just in our home, but all together. And we celebrate not just Jewish unity, but Jewish survival. When you have several hundred people coming together at a Chabad house and having a party together with good food and some fun entertainment, it's really a time for celebration. All these wonderful Jews sitting around and coming together and celebrating their existence and their survival. Yes, we made it through another Purim. We made it through another year. And we have more Jews and more Jews now, and more people are coming around. It's a wonderful, wonderful celebration. And I know that next year will be like that, especially. This year, we're hanging in hanging on through a thread. The Purim meal will be done, but in not such a large way. Next year, the Purim celebrations, the communal seders for Pesach, the holiday meals and the holiday services, God willing, will take place inside, hopefully, and lots of people will come. And it'll be a time for tremendous joy and tremendous happiness that people are all coming together, that it'll know no bounds. We will mourn those who died. Our hearts go out to them. Just this last week, we lost a very close part of the Jewish community here in San Diego, Dan Schwartz, who we all mourn his passing from COVID. A tremendous shock it was to all of us. And there have been people throughout the city who have been passing away because of the virus, and in other cities, and we mourn them, and we sympathize with their families and offer our deepest condolences. Next year will be the year of mourning will be over. And next year, the year of mourning will end with celebration. We will bring out a bottle of our finest whiskey or our finest vodka, and we will celebrate as never before. And we will celebrate that we got through this. We made it through. And we will pledge to God that this coming year will be a year of happiness and joy. The bracha that we give to each other, interestingly, on Purim we drink wine. We don't say Kiddush, but we drink wine. And wine in Hebrew is Brei Pri Hagafen, fruit of the vine. A gefen means a vine. And the word gefen is an abbreviation of three Hebrew words. Gimel, which means gesund in Yiddish, health. Pei is for parnasa, livelihood. And nun is for nachas. That we should have nachas, we should have joy and pride in our children and our grandchildren. So the traditional bracha that we give to each other is gefen. You should be blessed with gefen. When we drink wine and we make a l'chaim on wine, we should keep that in mind, that all of the blessings of health, parnasa, and children, nachas, should all be in abundance, not just minimally, but abundantly. This coming year, we should see a lot more Jewish children being born. We should see a lot more people keeping Shabbos and holidays and coming together in synagogues for prayer. And I want to wish you all a very happy Purim. We are now accepting limited reservations for Shmor Matzah, the round hand-baked matzah. I'll be mentioning that again in the next couple of weeks. We will be having it in limited supply. And I want to wish you all a happy Purim and a good Shabbos.